Ruth Prescott pressed her palm against the stagecoach window and whispered goodbye to the only life she'd ever known. 18 years old, sold like livestock to a stranger. Her father hadn't even looked at her when he signed the papers. Now she was heading toward a widower with 7 children who needed a mother, not a wife. 7. The number echoed in her chest like a death sentence. Welcome to Ruth's story. If her journey touches your heart, please subscribe and stay until the end. Comment your city below so I can see how far her courage travels. 7 mouths to feed. The stagecoach wheels groaned to a stop, and Ruth Prescott's stomach dropped straight through the floorboards. She'd counted the days. 14 of them. 14 days of dust strangers and the weight of her father's last words pressing against her ribs like a bruise that wouldn't fade. You're 18 now. Time you became someone else's burden. Ruth wiped her palms on her worn calico dress and forced herself to breathe. Through the smudged window she could see him. Had to be him. Tall man standing apart from the crowd, hat pulled low, shoulders set like he was bracing for a storm. And behind him, Lord have mercy. Children. So many children. She counted once, counted twice. 7. 7 small faces arranged in a crooked line, ranging from what looked like a teenage boy down to a tiny girl clutching a rag doll like her life depended on it. 7. The advertisement had said, "Widower with children seeks practical wife." It hadn't said anything about 7. "Blackwater Valley," the driver hollered. "Last stop." Ruth's hands trembled as she gathered her single carpet bag. Everything she owned fit inside it. 1 spare dress, her mother's recipe book, a hairbrush with a cracked handle, $17 sewn into her petticoat. That was the sum total of Ruth Prescott's worth to the world. The door swung open, and hot Wyoming air rushed in carrying dust and the smell of horses and something else, sage maybe, or desperation. Hard to tell which. "Ma'am?" The driver offered his hand. Ruth took it, stepped down, and felt her knees wobble. 2 weeks of sitting had turned her legs to jelly. Or maybe that was just fear. Fear worked too. She straightened her spine the way Mama had taught her before the fever took her. "Stand tall, Ruth Ann. Don't let them see you're scared. Scared girls get eaten alive out here." The man started walking toward her. Measured steps, deliberate. Like he was approaching a spooked horse and didn't want to make any sudden moves. Up close, he was younger than she'd expected. Maybe 32, 33. Dark hair going silver at the temples. Strong jaw covered in a few days' stubble. Eyes the color of storm clouds, gray and heavy with something that looked like grief pressed down so hard it had nowhere else to go. "Miss Prescott." His voice was low, careful. "Yes, sir. You must be Mr. Brennan." "Josiah." He pulled off his hat, turned it in his hands. "Josiah Brennan. I reckon you've had a long journey." "I have." Silence stretched between them. Behind him, the children hadn't moved. 7 statues, 7 pairs of eyes boring into her like she was an intruder, which she supposed she was. "These are my young'uns," Josiah said, turning halfway. "Samuel's the eldest. He's 15. The teenage boy at the end of the line gave a curt nod. He had his father's jaw, his father's suspicious eyes. His arms were crossed tight over his chest. Then there's Eli, 12. Another boy, skinnier, with a shock of red hair that didn't match anyone else. He looked at the ground instead of at her. The twins are Abigail and Isaiah. They're 10. 2 children who might have been carved from the same block of wood. Same brown hair, same wary expressions, same way of leaning into each other like they were sharing one shadow. Nettie's 8, Clara's 5. 2 girls. Nettie had braids coming undone. Clara was missing one of her front teeth and stared at Ruth with naked curiosity. And the littlest is Mercy. She's 3. The tiny one with the rag doll. She had her thumb in her mouth and her face half hidden behind her father's leg. Ruth's throat tightened. 7 children. The oldest had probably helped raise the youngest. The youngest probably didn't even remember her mother. "Hello," Ruth said, addressing all of them at once. "I'm Ruth. I'm very glad to meet you." Nothing. Not a single response. Samuel's expression darkened. The twins exchanged a look that clearly said, "We don't trust her." Little Mercy pressed closer to her father. "They're shy with strangers," Josiah said, though his tone suggested shy was a charitable word for it. "I understand." Ruth kept her voice gentle. "I'm a stranger to myself these days, too." Something flickered across Josiah's face. Surprise, maybe. He wasn't expecting honesty. Most mail-order brides probably came with a script sweetness and promises and practiced smiles. Ruth didn't have any of those left. "Wagons this way," Josiah said. "Samuel helped Miss Prescott with her bag." "She's only got the one," Samuel said flatly. "Reckon she can manage." "Samuel." The warning in Josiah's voice was quiet but unmistakable. Father and son locked eyes for a long moment. A battle of wills Ruth recognized instantly. She'd seen it before in her own house between her father and his new wife. That battle she'd lost. "It's fine," Ruth said quickly. "I can carry it. It's not heavy." Samuel's jaw twitched. He didn't look grateful for the save. If anything, he looked angrier, like she'd taken something from him by not letting him refuse properly. The walk to the wagon was silent. Ruth fell into step behind Josiah, surrounded on all sides by children who parted around her like water around a stone. She could feel their eyes on her back, feel their judgment pressing against her skin. What did you expect, she asked herself? A welcome party. She hadn't expected anything. That was the problem. When you expected nothing, everything hurt equally. Josiah helped her up onto the wagon seat. His hand was rough with calluses, his grip firm but impersonal. The children piled into the back, a practiced routine. Everybody knew their spot. Nobody needed to be told. Nobody made room for Ruth. She sat up front beside Josiah, her carpet bag clutched in her lap like a shield, and tried not to think about the fact that every single person in this wagon wished she hadn't come. The ranch materialized after 2 hours of dusty roads and silence so thick Ruth could have choked on it. It wasn't much. A 2-story house with a wraparound porch paint peeling in places. A barn that leaned slightly to the left. A chicken coop, a vegetable garden gone to seed, a corral with 3 horses watching their approach with mild interest. But it was more than she'd had back in Missouri. More than her father's cramped house with its cramped hearts and her stepmother's constant reminders that Ruth was taking up space that didn't belong to her. "Home," Josiah said, though he didn't sound particularly happy about it. The children scattered the moment the wagon stopped. Samuel stalked toward the barn without a backward glance. Eli followed. The twins disappeared around the side of the house. Nettie and Clara ran inside, the screen door banging behind them. Only Mercy remained still, clutching her rag doll, still watching Ruth with those enormous brown eyes. "She doesn't talk much," Josiah said, climbing down. "Not since her mama—" He stopped, swallowed. The grief in his face was so raw that Ruth had to look away. "I understand," she said softly. Josiah reached up to help her down. This time, his hands lingered a fraction longer. Not improper, just tired, like the act of touching another human being took more energy than he had to spare. "I should show you the house," he said. "Kitchen, your room, Martha?" He stopped again, pressed his lips together. "My late wife. Her things are still... I haven't had time to... Mr. Brennan." "Josiah. Josiah." Ruth squared her shoulders. "I'm not here to erase your wife. I'm here to help. That's all. Whatever you need, whatever the children need, I'll do my best. But I won't pretend to be something I'm not. I can cook, I can clean, I can mend clothes and tend gardens and manage a household. What I can't do is replace someone who was loved." He stared at her for a long moment. Ruth held her ground. She'd learned that much from her stepmother: never show weakness. Never let them see you flinch. "How old are you?" Josiah asked suddenly. 18. 18. He said it like a curse. "And your family just sent you away." "My father remarried. His new wife has her own children. I was—" Ruth searched for a word that didn't sound as pathetic as the truth. "Unnecessary. Unnecessary." Josiah's jaw tightened. "You're a person, not a piece of furniture." Try telling them that. It came out harder than she'd intended. Josiah blinked. Ruth looked away, embarrassed by her own bitterness. "I apologize," she said stiffly. "That was uncalled for." "No." Josiah's voice had changed, softened somehow. "No, I reckon it was the most honest thing anyone said to me in months. Come on. Let's get you settled before supper." The house was clean but chaotic. Toys scattered across the floor. Books stacked on every surface. A basket of laundry sat by the stairs, clearly waiting for someone who had time to fold it. Nobody did. That much was obvious. "Kitchen's through there," Josiah said. "Pantry's stocked. Nettie does the inventory. She's particular about it. Washing's done on Mondays. The younger ones need help with their baths. Samuel thinks he's too old for supervision, but he'll slack on his ears if you don't check." He was rattling off information like a man reading a list, distancing himself from the emotion behind each item. These were things his wife had done. Things he'd been fumbling through for how long? "When did she pass?" Ruth asked quietly. Josiah stopped walking. His hand rested on the banister knuckles white. 3 months ago." Ruth's blood went cold. 3 months. Not a year. Not 2 years. 3 months. The advertisement had been vague. "Widower seeks wife." No timeline. No indication that the loss was still so fresh. The wound hadn't even scabbed over. "The children," she started. "Don't know I sent for you." Josiah's voice was hollow. "They think you're a family friend. Here to help. A family friend who's moving in. A family friend who might stay. If it works out." Ruth stared at him. "You lied to them. I protected them." "From what? The truth?" Josiah spun around. For the first time she saw anger in his eyes. Real hot anger that burned through the grief like a brush fire. "The truth is that their mama died bringing a baby into this world. A baby that died right along with her. The truth is that I can't run this ranch and raise 7 children alone. The truth is that I'm drowning, Miss Prescott, and I sent for you because I had no other choice. So yes, I lied to my children, because telling them their daddy's already looking to replace their mama felt like a cruelty I couldn't add to everything else." The words echoed in the empty hallway. Somewhere upstairs, a door slammed. One of the children listening. Maybe more than one. Ruth took a breath, then another. "Okay," she said. Josiah blinked. "Okay. Okay, I understand. I don't agree with it, but I understand." She set her carpetbag down on the bottom step. "But here's what's going to happen. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not going to sneak around your children like I'm something to be ashamed of. If I'm staying, if this arrangement is going to work, they need to know the truth. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Before one of them figures it out on their own and feels betrayed by both of us." Josiah's shoulders sagged. For a moment he looked every one of his 33 years and then some. "You're not what I expected," he said. "I could say the same about you." Ruth picked up her bag. "Now, which room is mine?" The room was small. A narrow bed, a washstand, a window overlooking the chicken coop. The walls were bare except for a single cross above the headboard. Ruth sat on the edge of the bed and let herself feel it all. 3 months. 7 children. A man so broken He could barely say his wife's name. A house full of grief so thick it lived in the walls. And her. 18 years old, sold like cattle to fill a dead woman's shoes. She should be crying. She should be terrified. She should be demanding that stagecoach turn around and take her back to Missouri. But back to what? Her father's indifference, her stepmother's cruelty, the suffocating certainty that she would spend her whole life being unnecessary, unwanted, unloved. At least here, she was needed. At least here, there was work to do. Ruth pulled her mother's recipe book from her carpet bag and held it against her chest. The leather cover was worn smooth from years of handling. Inside, her mother's handwriting filled every page recipes, yes, but also notes. Advice. Little observations about life and love and loss. Ruth Ann. One entry read, "A family isn't made of blood. It's made of the people who show up, day after day, through the hard times and the boring times and the beautiful times. It's made of showing up." Ruth traced the faded ink with her fingertip. Show up. That's all she had to do. Show up day after day until these strangers became something else, until this house became a home, until she earned a place at their table. A knock at the door made her jump. "Miss Ruth!" A child's voice, small and uncertain. Ruth tucked the book away and crossed to the door. When she opened it, little Mercy stood in the hallway, rag doll dangling from one hand, thumb firmly planted in her mouth. "Hello, sweetheart," Ruth said softly, crouching down to Mercy's level. "Did you need something?" Mercy pulled her thumb out with a wet pop. Her eyes, huge and brown, and heartbreakingly serious, studied Ruth's face like she was searching for something. "Are you going to be our new mama?" she whispered. Ruth's heart cracked clean in half. She could lie, could deflect, could say, "Ask your daddy," and push this off onto Josiah. But those eyes, that trembling voice, this child had already lost so much. "I don't know yet," Ruth said honestly, "but I'm going to try very hard to take good care of you and your brothers and sisters. Would that be okay?" Mercy considered this. Then slowly she held out her rag doll. "This is Martha," she said. "Like Mama." Ruth's throat closed up completely. "She's beautiful," she managed. "You can hold her." Mercy placed the doll in Ruth's hands with the gravity of a sacred offering. "She gets scared at night sometimes. I tell her stories until she falls asleep." "That's very kind of you. Mama used to tell me stories." Mercy's lower lip trembled. "I don't remember them anymore." Ruth gathered the child into her arms before she could think about whether it was appropriate. Mercy went rigid for a moment, then melted against her small body, shaking with tears she'd probably been holding back for 3 months. "It's okay," Ruth murmured, stroking the girl's hair. "It's okay to be sad. It's okay to miss her." She didn't make promises she couldn't keep. Didn't say everything will be fine, or I'll make it better. She just held this tiny grieving child and let her cry. That's when she saw him. Samuel. Standing at the end of the hallway. Watching. His expression was unreadable. Then he turned and walked away, footsteps heavy on the stairs. Ruth closed her eyes. Day one, she thought. Just get through day one. Supper was a disaster. Ruth had found the kitchen easily enough, had located ingredients for a simple stew, had even managed to get it simmering on the stove before Clara announced that she didn't eat carrots. Nettie declared that Mama's stew never had thyme in it. The twins complained that they were hungry. Now, and Samuel informed the entire table that he wasn't eating anything cooked by her. Josiah sat at the head of the table, jaw tight, saying nothing. Ruth served the stew anyway. Placed each bowl with steady hands. Sat down in the chair that nobody had claimed Martha's chair, she realized too late when she saw the look on Eli's face. She started to rise. "Sit," Josiah said quietly. "You're at the table now. You sit." Ruth sat. The stew went cold while everyone stared at their bowls. Finally, 3-year-old Mercy picked up her spoon, took a bite, and announced, "I like it." Ruth could have kissed her. One by one, the younger children began eating. Clara picked out the carrots, but finished everything else. The twins ate in synchronized bites. Nettie grudgingly admitted the bread wasn't terrible. Samuel didn't touch his food. Neither did Josiah. Halfway through the meal, Samuel pushed back from the table. "I've got chores," he said, and walked out before anyone could stop him. Josiah sighed heavily. "I'll talk to him." "Don't." Ruth surprised herself with the word. "Let him be angry. He's earned that right." "He's being rude. He's grieving. There's a difference." Josiah's eyes met hers across the table. The children had gone quiet watching this exchange like it was a performance. "You keep saying that," Josiah said slowly. "That you understand grief, that you understand loss." "Because I do." "How?" Ruth set down her spoon. Every instinct told her to deflect to protect herself, to keep the walls up. But these children needed to see that she was human, that she'd survived her own losses and come out the other side. "My mother died when I was 11, she said quietly. "Fever took her in the night. I was holding her hand when she went. My father, he wasn't the same after. Married again within a year. A woman who made it very clear I was in the way." She looked around the table. 7 faces staring back at her. Some hostile, some curious, all listening. "I know what it's like to lose someone you love and have to keep living anyway. I know what it's like to feel like a stranger in your own home. I'm not going to pretend I can fix any of that for you, but I'm also not going to disappear." "Mama disappeared," Abigail, one of the twins, said quietly. "Yes, she did. And that wasn't her choice. She didn't want to leave you." Ruth's voice broke slightly. "But I'm choosing to be here. And I'm going to keep choosing it every single day until you believe me." Silence. Then Isaiah, the other twin, reached across the table and slid Samuel's untouched bowl toward Ruth. "You should eat," he said gruffly. "You're too skinny. Can't take care of us if you faint." It wasn't acceptance, not even close, but it was something. Ruth picked up her spoon and ate. Later that night, after the children were in bed and the dishes were done and the house had finally gone quiet, Ruth stood on the porch and watched the stars come out over Wyoming. She heard Josiah's footsteps before she saw him. Heavy boots on wooden planks, the creak of the door. He stood beside her close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, far enough that propriety was maintained. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For staying. For trying." Ruth kept her eyes on the sky. "It's only been 1 day. Most women would have run by now." "I've got nowhere to run to." Josiah was quiet for a moment. Then, "That why you came because you had no choice?" Ruth considered the question. Considered lying. Decided she was too tired. "Partly," she admitted. "But also because I wanted to matter to someone, even if it was strangers, even if they didn't want me. I wanted to be somewhere I was needed, not just tolerated." "You're needed," Josiah said quietly. "I can promise you that much. And the children, they'll come around." "You sure about that?" Josiah turned to face her. In the darkness, she couldn't read his expression, but she could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "No," he said honestly. "I'm not sure about anything anymore. But I know that Martha, she would have liked you. She would have said you had steel in your spine." Ruth's chest tightened. "You don't know me." "I know enough." He tipped his hat, an old-fashioned gesture, strangely formal. "Good night, Miss Prescott. Try to get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." He went inside. The door closed softly behind him. Ruth stayed on the porch until the stars blurred and she realized she was crying. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, squared her shoulders, and went to bed in a dead woman's house, surrounded by a dead woman's children sleeping in a room that smelled like lavender and loss. Day 1, she thought. 6 more to survive before they start believing I'm staying. Somewhere in the house, a child cried out in their sleep. Ruth was on her feet before she could think, moving toward the sound, doing what she'd come here to do, showing up. The crying came from Mercy's room. Ruth found her tangled in the sheets, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. The rag doll Martha had fallen to the floor. "Shh, sweetheart." Ruth gathered the child into her arms. "I'm here. You're safe." "Mama," Mercy wailed. "I want Mama." Ruth's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She rocked the little girl, humming a tune her own mother used to sing. No words, just melody, just presence. Footsteps in the hallway. She looked up to find Clara standing in the doorway, 5 years old and clutching a blanket. "She does this every night," Clara whispered. "Papa tries, but she only stops crying when she falls asleep again." "How long?" "Since Mama went to heaven." 3 months. 90 nights of this child screaming for a mother who would never come. Ruth kept rocking, kept humming. Eventually, Mercy's sobs faded to hiccups, then to shudders, then to the deep, exhausted breathing of a child who'd cried herself out. Clara hadn't moved from the doorway. "You can go back to bed," Ruth said softly. "I don't want to." Ruth patted the space beside her on Mercy's narrow bed. Clara hesitated, then crossed the room and curled up against Ruth's side. 2 down, 5 to go. She stayed there until dawn lightened the windows, one child in her arms, another pressed against her ribs. Her back ached, her eyes burned. But when Mercy woke and found Ruth still there, something shifted in that tiny face. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. The first week nearly killed her. Ruth learned quickly that 7 children meant 7 different needs, 7 different personalities, 7 different ways of testing her limits. Samuel avoided her completely, walked out of any room she entered, answered her questions with grunts or silence. Twice she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, studying her like she was a problem he couldn't solve. Eli was quieter, but no less hostile. He'd inherited his mother's red hair from some distant relative, and the other children's teasing about it had made him defensive. He flinched when Ruth tried to help him with his schoolwork, as if kindness was a trap waiting to spring. The twins operated as a unit. Abigail was the leader. Isaiah followed. They'd developed their own language of looks and gestures that excluded everyone else. When Ruth asked them a question, they'd glance at each other, first conducting some silent negotiation before one of them deigned to answer. Nettie had appointed herself the household manager, 8 years old, and already keeping inventory of the pantry, monitoring her siblings' chores, reporting infractions to her father with the gravity of a courtroom prosecutor. She resented Ruth's presence in the kitchen most of all. "That's not where the flour goes," she announced on Ruth's 3rd morning. "Where does it go? Mama kept it in the blue tin, not the brown one." Ruth moved the flour to the blue tin. Nettie watched her do it, then walked away without another word. Clara was the easiest. 5 years old and desperate for attention, she followed Ruth around the house like a duckling imprinting on the first moving thing it saw. She asked endless questions. "Why is your hair that color? Why do you talk different? Why don't you wear pretty dresses like Mama did?" And seemed satisfied with whatever answers Ruth provided. And Mercy. Little Mercy, who still cried every night, who still clutched her rag doll like a lifeline, who had started reaching for Ruth's hand during meals. That small gesture almost broke Ruth every single time. "She's getting attached," Samuel said one evening, his voice sharp. Ruth was washing dishes. She didn't turn around. "Is that a problem?" "It will be, when you leave." "I'm not planning to leave." "That's what Aunt Catherine said. And Miss Peterson. And the lady from the church who came to help after—" He stopped, swallowed. They all left. Everyone leaves. Ruth set down the dish she was holding, turned to face him. 15 years old, tall for his age, but still a boy underneath all that bristling anger. A boy who'd watched his mother die and then watched every other woman walk away. "Samuel," she said carefully, "I can't promise you I'll never leave. I can't predict the future, but I can promise you this: I won't leave without a fight. I won't leave because it gets hard, and I won't leave those little ones wondering what they did wrong." His jaw worked. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to be left. My mother died when I was 11. My father might as well have died with her for all the attention he paid me afterward. So yes, Samuel, I know about leaving, and I know about staying with people who don't want you there." Something flickered in his eyes, pain, recognizing pain. Then he turned and walked out, the screen door banging behind him. Ruth went back to washing dishes. Her hands were shaking. Progress, she told herself. That was progress. On the 8th day, the town came to call. Ruth was hanging laundry when the wagon rolled up the drive. 3 women perched on the seat dressed in their Sunday best, despite it being Wednesday. Their faces wore identical expressions of pleasant curiosity that didn't quite hide the sharpness underneath. "You must be the new helper." The woman who spoke was maybe 50, silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her smile showed too many teeth. "I'm Cordelia Ashworth. This is my daughter Patience and Mrs. Holloway." Ruth wiped her hands on her apron. "Ruth Prescott, pleased to meet you." "I'm sure you are." Cordelia's gaze swept over Ruth's worn dress, her work-roughened hands, her hair escaping its pins. "We thought we'd welcome you properly, see how you're settling in." "That's very kind." "Isn't it?" Patience, a pretty girl about Ruth's age with cold eyes, tilted her head. "We were all so surprised when Josiah sent for help so soon after poor Martha." 3 months isn't soon," Ruth said evenly. "It's desperate. 7 children is a lot for one person to manage." "Oh, we offered to help." Cordelia's voice dripped sweetness. "The whole town did, but Josiah was quite insistent on handling things himself. Until suddenly he wasn't." The implication hung in the air like smoke. "If you have something to say, Mrs. Ashworth, I'd prefer you just say it." Cordelia's smile sharpened. "I'm simply concerned for the children. They've been through so much. They don't need any more disruption." "Neither do I, which is why I intend to stay and make sure they're cared for properly." "Stay?" Patience laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. "Is that what you're calling it? We heard you came from Missouri, heard your own family couldn't wait to get rid of you." Ruth's stomach dropped. How had they, small towns, talk, dear? Cordelia watched Ruth's reaction with evident satisfaction. "Letters travel. People have connections. Your stepmother was quite forthcoming about why you left." "I'm sure she was. She said you were difficult, stubborn, that you refused to know your place." Ruth lifted her chin. "She said a lot of things, most of them to make herself feel better about treating me like an inconvenience instead of a person." "So you admit there was conflict?" "I admit I survived, which is more than some people do." Cordelia's eyes narrowed. For a moment, the pleasant mask slipped, revealing something harder underneath. "Josiah Brennan is a good man," she said quietly. "A respected man. He doesn't need some cast-off girl ruining his reputation." "And what would ruin it exactly? Hiring help, being practical, or having the audacity to keep functioning after his wife died? You watch your tongue, girl." "I will when you watch yours, ma'am." The air between them crackled. Mrs. Holloway shifted uncomfortably. Patience's mouth had fallen open in shock. Then a voice came from behind Ruth. "Is there a problem here?" Samuel, standing on the porch with his arms crossed, looking for all the world like a younger version of his father. Cordelia's smile returned softer now. "Samuel, dear, how are you holding up?" "Fine. Was there something you needed?" "We were just welcoming Miss Prescott to Blackwater Valley." Looked more like you were interrogating her. Samuel. My pa hired her. That's his business, not yours. The silence stretched taut as a wire. Ruth watched Cordelia's face cycle through surprise irritation, and finally, a cold, calculating acceptance. Of course, Cordelia said smoothly. We'll leave you to your work. But do remember, Miss Prescott, this is a small community. We look out for our own. So do I, Ruth replied. Good day, Mrs. Ashworth. The wagon rolled away. Ruth let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Thank you, she said to Samuel. He shrugged, not looking at her. Don't read into it. I just don't like Mrs. Ashworth. She's been circling Pa like a vulture ever since Mama died. Wants him to marry Patience. And your father says he'd rather eat glass. Ruth surprised herself by laughing. Samuel's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. She'll be back, he said. And she'll bring others. They'll try to drive you out. Let them try. Samuel studied her for a long moment. You really aren't going to leave, are you? Not unless your father fires me or the house burns down. Pa doesn't fire anyone, and the house is stone. Then I guess you're stuck with me. Another almost smile. Then he walked back into the barn, and Ruth returned to her laundry with the strange sense that something important had just shifted. That night, Josiah found her in the kitchen, scrubbing pots by lamplight. Heard about your visitors, he said. Word travels fast. Samuel told me, said you held your own. Ruth kept scrubbing. I've dealt with worse. I don't doubt it. Josiah leaned against the doorframe. Cordelia Ashworth has been a thorn in this town's side for 20 years. She'll make trouble for you. I figured. You don't seem bothered. Ruth finally looked up. Should I be? Most people are. She's got influence, money. Half the town owes her favors. And the other half owes her money. Ruth snorted. So she's a loan shark in a fancy dress. Essentially. Josiah almost smiled. Her husband died 15 years ago, left her everything. She's spent the time since building an empire and trying to control everyone in it. Including you. Especially me. He crossed his arms. She had plans for Patience and me. I wasn't interested. Then I met Martha, and Cordelia's been nursing that grudge ever since. So my being here throws a wrench in whatever scheme she was cooking up. She probably assumed I'd eventually give in. Marry Patience, merge our properties, become part of her little kingdom. And instead you sent for a stranger. I sent for help, Josiah corrected. Didn't expect it to come in the form of an 18-year-old who argues with town gossips. Sorry to disappoint. Didn't say I was disappointed. His voice softened. The children, they're talking about you, at supper, when they think I'm not listening. Ruth's hands stilled. What are they saying? Mercy told Clara you smell like flowers. Clara told Nettie you don't yell even when things go wrong. Nettie told the twins you moved the flour to the right tin without being asked twice. That's something. It's more than something. Josiah stepped closer. They haven't talked this much since Martha died, about anything, or anyone. Ruth didn't know what to say. Her throat felt too tight for words. I know this isn't what you imagined, Josiah continued. Coming out here, stepping into this mess. I know the children haven't made it easy. I know I haven't made it easy. But you're doing something right, Miss Prescott. Whatever it is, keep doing it. He left before she could respond. Ruth stood there in the lamplight, surrounded by dirty dishes and the ghost of a dead woman's life, and felt something crack open in her chest. Hope. Fragile and terrifying. She'd almost forgotten what it felt like. The second week was harder. Not because the children were crueler, they weren't. If anything, the younger ones had started thawing. Clara had taken to holding Ruth's hand during grace. The twins had stopped their silent consultations before answering her questions. Even Nettie had grudgingly admitted that Ruth's biscuits were acceptable. No, the second week was harder because of what happened at church. Josiah insisted they all attend Sunday service. Martha wouldn't have it any other way, he said. And that was that. Ruth dressed in her best dress, her only good dress, and tried not to feel like a fraud as she climbed into the wagon beside 7 children, who still couldn't decide if they trusted her. The church was small and white, and packed with people who all turned to stare when the Brennan family walked in. With Ruth. The whispers started immediately. Ruth kept her eyes forward, spine straight, chin up. She'd learned that trick from her mother. Never let them see you're scared. Never give them ammunition. But the stairs. God, the stairs. They found a pew near the back. The children filed in with practiced ease. Ruth sat at the end, Mercy on one side, an empty space on the other. No one sat near them. The sermon was about charity, about welcoming strangers. The irony wasn't lost on Ruth. Afterward, on the church steps, Cordelia Ashworth struck. "Poor thing," her voice carried across the crowd. Can you imagine answering an advertisement like like livestock at auction? Laughter. Quiet, cruel laughter. They say her own family paid to be rid of her. More laughter. Ruth's face burned. Some people, Cordelia continued, have no shame, no breeding, no sense of propriety. They'll attach themselves to any man willing to take them in, regardless of how inappropriate. That's enough. Josiah's voice cut through the noise like a whip crack. The crowd went silent. Cordelia's smile froze. "I don't know what stories you've been telling yourself, Mrs. Ashworth." Josiah stepped forward, placing himself between Ruth and the crowd. "But Miss Prescott is here because I asked her to be. She's caring for my children. She's running my household, and she's doing a damn fine job of both. Mr. Brennan, I hardly think—" "You're right. You don't think. You gossip. You scheme. You've been trying to run this town and everyone in it for 15 years, and frankly, ma'am, I'm tired of it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ruth saw Patience's face go pale. "Miss Prescott came here with nothing," Josiah continued. "Nothing but courage and a willingness to work. She's shown more grace under fire in 2 weeks than some people show in a lifetime. So if you have a problem with her presence in my home, that's your problem, not hers, and not mine." He turned to Ruth, extended his hand. "Let's go home." Ruth took his hand. It was warm and rough and steady. They walked to the wagon together, 7 children trailing behind them. The crowd parted like water. No one said a word. That night, after the children were asleep, Ruth found Josiah on the porch. He was staring at the stars, his face unreadable in the darkness. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did. People will talk. People already talk. At least now they'll have something true to say." Ruth sat down on the top step, hugging her knees. "She'll come for you. Cordelia, she won't let that humiliation stand." "I know." "Aren't you worried?" Josiah was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down beside her close enough that she could feel the heat of him far enough that it wasn't improper. "Martha used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear," he said. "It's the decision that something else is more important. My children needed to see me stand up for you. They needed to know that this family protects its own. I'm not family. You're closer than most." He turned to look at her. "You've been here 2 weeks, Miss Prescott. 2 weeks, and already my children are laughing again. Already Mercy's sleeping through some nights. Already Samuel's talking instead of just glaring. That's not me. That's time. That's them starting to heal. Maybe. Or maybe it's you showing up every single day even when they push you away. Maybe it's you learning how Nettie likes the flowers stored, and how the twins need to sit next to each other at meals, and how Mercy needs her doll arranged just so before she can sleep." Ruth's eyes burned. "I'm just doing what needs doing." "So am I." Josiah's voice was low intent. "What needed doing today was defending you. So I did." They sat in silence watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. "Josiah," Ruth said finally. "Yes." "Thank you." He nodded. Didn't say anything else. But when they finally went inside, when Ruth climbed the stairs to her small room and lay down in her narrow bed, she realized something had changed. For the first time since she'd arrived, she didn't feel like a stranger. She felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 2 days later, everything fell apart. It started with Eli. Ruth was in the kitchen when she heard the shouting. She dropped the pot she was holding and ran outside to find Samuel pinning his younger brother to the ground, fists flying. "Take it back!" Samuel roared. "It's true!" Eli screamed. "She's not our sister. She's just some stranger Pa bought to replace Mama." Ruth's blood went cold. "Samuel, Eli." She ran toward them, grabbed Samuel's arm, tried to pull him off. "Stop it! Both of you!" Samuel shook her off. His fist connected with Eli's jaw. Eli howled and kicked upward, catching Samuel in the ribs. "Enough!" Josiah's voice thundered across the yard. He covered the distance in 3 strides, grabbed both boys by their collars and hauled them apart. "What in God's name is going on here?" Both boys were crying now. Samuel from rage, Eli from pain. And something else. Something that looked like terror. "He started it," Samuel spat. "He hit me first. Because you said, I said the truth. Boys." Josiah's voice was deadly quiet. "Someone explain. Now." Eli pointed at Ruth. His face was blotchy, tear streaked his lip already swelling. "Tommy Ashworth told me," he gasped. "At church. He said Pa bought her, like a horse, like property. He said she answered an advertisement. He said she's gonna be our new mama, and we don't get a say in it." The world stopped. Ruth watched Josiah's face drain of color, watched the careful wall he'd built around this secret crumble in real time. "Is it true?" Samuel's voice was raw. "Pa? Is it true?" Josiah closed his eyes. "Samuel, is it true?" The silence was answer enough. Samuel wrenched free of his father's grip. "You lied to us. You said she was a family friend. You said, I know what I said." "Then why?" Samuel's voice cracked. "Why would you do this? Why would you bring some stranger here and lie about it?" "Because I was drowning." Josiah's voice broke. "Because your mother died and I couldn't do this alone. The ranch, the house, all of you. I was failing you. Every single day I was failing you and I couldn't bear it anymore. So you bought a replacement. I hired help. You thought we wouldn't find out. You thought you could just sneak some woman into Mama's house, into Mama's kitchen, into—" Samuel stopped. His eyes went to Ruth, then back to his father. "Into Mama's bed. That's not— Is that the plan? Marry her. Make us call her Mama, while our real Mama's barely cold in the ground. Samuel, listen to me." "No." Samuel backed away. "No, I'm done listening. I'm done pretending everything's fine when it's not. I'm done watching you try to erase her." He turned and ran. Not to the barn this time, past it, toward the hills, toward open country. "Samuel," Josiah started after him. "Don't." Ruth caught his arm. "Let me. He's my son. And he's not ready to hear you. Not yet." Ruth held his gaze. "Let me try. Please." Something in Josiah's face cracked. He looked at Eli still crying on the ground. At the porch, where 5 other children had gathered, their faces pale with shock. "Go," he said hoarsely. "Bring him back." Ruth ran. She found Samuel half a mile from the house, sitting on a boulder, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She didn't say anything, just sat down beside him on the hard rock and waited. The sun beat down. A hawk circled overhead. Somewhere far away, cattle lowed. "I hate him," Samuel said finally. His voice was raw. I hate him for lying. I hate him for bringing you here. I hate him for not being enough. I know. I hate myself for not being enough either. His voice cracked. Mama asked me to take care of them. Before she made me promise. And I tried. I tried so hard. But they kept crying, and the little ones needed things I couldn't give them, and Pa just disappeared into himself. So I did everything. I was the one who got up with Mercy at night. I was the one who made sure Clara ate. I was the one who held this family together while Pa fell apart. Ruth's heart shattered for this boy. This 15-year-old who'd been carrying the weight of an entire family on his shoulders. And then he brought you here, Samuel continued. Without asking, without warning, like everything I did wasn't good enough, like I wasn't good enough. That's not why he brought me. Then why? Ruth considered her words carefully. Because he could see you were drowning too. And he couldn't watch another person he loved drown. Samuel's breath hitched. He said that he didn't have to. I see it in the way he looks at you, the way he watches you work yourself to exhaustion every single day, the way he flinches when you call him Pa instead of Daddy, like you probably used to. Tears streamed down Samuel's face. He didn't wipe them away. I'm not here to replace your mother, Ruth said quietly. I couldn't even if I wanted to. She lives in all of you, in Mercy's eyes, in Clara's laugh, in the way Nettie organizes the pantry, exactly the way Martha taught her. I can't compete with that. I wouldn't try. Then what are you here for? To help carry what's too heavy for one person to lift alone. Ruth's voice was steady despite the tears building behind her own eyes. That's all, just to help, until you don't need me anymore. Samuel was quiet for a long time. The hawk had disappeared. The sun had shifted. Tommy Ashworth is a liar, he said finally. About what? He said you came here looking for money, looking for a rich widower to trap. Samuel met her eyes. But you didn't know, did you? About the advertisement. About what it really meant. I knew I was coming to help with children. I knew I was coming to a man who'd lost his wife. Ruth paused. I didn't know it had only been 3 months. I didn't know there were 7 of you. And I didn't know your father was planning to eventually make it official. Are you going to marry him? I don't know. The honest answer. The only one she had. That wasn't part of my plan. I just wanted somewhere to go, somewhere I might be wanted. And now? Ruth looked back toward the house, tiny in the distance, full of children who needed her, full of a man who'd stood up for her in front of an entire town. Now I want to stay, she said, not because of any arrangement, not because I have nowhere else to go, because I care about those children, and because I think I could care about this family, if they'll let me. Samuel stood, brushed off his pants, looked down at her with something new in his eyes, not trust exactly, but the absence of hostility. I'll try, he said. I'm not promising anything, but I'll try. Ruth stood too. That's all I'm asking. They walked back together, not touching, not talking, but somehow closer than they'd been before. When they reached the house, Josiah was waiting on the porch. His face was gray with worry. Samuel walked past him without a word, into the house, up the stairs, but he didn't slam his door. Josiah let out a breath that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet. Ruth climbed the porch steps. This isn't over. You need to talk to all of them. Tell them the truth, the whole truth. I know. Tonight, Josiah, not tomorrow. Not when it's convenient. Tonight. He nodded. He looked exhausted, defeated, older than his years. I'm sorry, he said, for putting you in this position, for making you clean up my mess. You didn't make me do anything. I chose to go after him. Why? Ruth looked through the screen door at the house beyond. At the family she'd somehow become a part of without realizing it. Because that's what family does, she said. They show up. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Josiah stared at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he reached out and took her hand. Squeezed it once. "You're remarkable, Ruth Prescott," he said quietly. "I don't know if I've told you that." "You haven't." "Well, I should have. I should say a lot of things I don't say." He released her hand. "But you're right. Tonight. I'll tell them everything." He went inside. Ruth stayed on the porch watching the sun set over Wyoming and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Whatever it was, she'd face it. She wasn't going anywhere. Josiah gathered them after supper. All 7 children sat in the front room, arranged by age like stair steps. Samuel at one end, arms crossed, face unreadable. Mercy at the other, clutching her ragdoll thumb in her mouth. Ruth stood in the doorway. Josiah had asked her to stay. "They need to see we're united," he'd said. "Whatever comes next." "I owe you all an apology," Josiah began. His voice was rough. "I lied to you. About Miss Ruth. About why she's here." Clara's hand found Ruth's skirt fingers twisting in the fabric. "She didn't come here as a family friend. She came because I sent for her. I placed an advertisement in a newspaper back east looking for someone to help with the household. To help with all of you." "Like a servant?" Nettie's voice was sharp. "No. Like a partner." "You mean a wife?" Samuel's words fell like stones. Josiah flinched. "Eventually. Maybe. I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't do this alone anymore." "Why didn't you tell us?" Abigail demanded. Isaiah nodded beside her, their faces mirror images of betrayal. "Because I was ashamed." Josiah's voice cracked. "Your mama had been gone 3 months. 3 months, and I was already looking for someone to take her place. What kind of man does that?" "A desperate one," Ruth said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. A man who loves his children so much, he'd rather be judged than watch them suffer. She stepped into the room. "Your father didn't send for me because he wanted to forget your mother. He sent for me because he remembered what she would have wanted, for all of you to be cared for, to be loved, to have someone making sure you eat your vegetables and wash behind your ears and don't stay up too late reading by candlelight." Eli's ears went red. He was notorious for that last one. "I'm not here to replace her," Ruth continued. "I couldn't if I tried, but I am here, and I'm not leaving. So the question isn't whether you like it or whether you wanted it. The question is, what are we going to do now?" Silence. Then Mercy pulled her thumb out of her mouth. "I want Miss Ruth to stay." Clara nodded vigorously. "Me too." The twins exchanged one of their looks. Isaiah shrugged. Abigail sighed. "She makes good biscuits," Abigail admitted grudgingly. Nettie was harder. She sat rigid, her small face working through emotions too big for her 8 years. "Mama showed me how to run this house," she said finally. "She taught me everything. The pantry, the linens, the schedule for washing. She said I was her little helper." "You still are," Ruth said gently. "I'm not taking that away from you, Nettie. I'm asking you to teach me. Show me how your mama did things. Help me do them right." Nettie's lower lip trembled. "You mean it. Every word." The girl nodded once, sharp, decisive. "Fine, but the flour stays in the blue tin. Always." That left Samuel and Eli. Eli hadn't looked up from the floor since the conversation started. His jaw was still bruised from the fight. His shoulders were hunched, like he was trying to disappear into himself. "Eli," Josiah said softly. "Son, look at me." Eli raised his eyes. They were swimming with tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to start a fight. Tommy said things and I got angry and You defended this family." Samuel cut in. Everyone stared at him. "Tommy Ashworth was spreading lies and you called him on it. That's not something to apologize for." "But I said, I know what you said." Samuel's voice was gruff. "And you weren't wrong. She is a stranger. Pa did bring her here without asking us." He paused, took a breath. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we needed someone Pa could ask for help. Someone who wasn't us." Ruth felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm still mad," Samuel added, looking at his father. "I'm not going to pretend I'm not, but I'm not going to run away from it either. Mama wouldn't want that." Josiah's face crumpled. For a terrible moment, Ruth thought he might cry. He didn't. Instead, he crossed the room and pulled his eldest son into a fierce embrace. "I'm sorry," he said against Samuel's hair. "I'm so sorry I put this on you. You've been carrying us all and I didn't even see it." Samuel's arms came up slowly, wrapped around his father's back. "I see you now," Josiah continued. "I see all of you. And I promise no more lies, no more secrets. Whatever happens next, we face it together." The other children piled in. A tangle of arms and bodies and tears. Ruth stood apart, not wanting to intrude. Then a small hand grabbed hers. Mercy. Looking up at her with those enormous brown eyes. "You too," she said. "Family." Ruth let herself be pulled into the embrace. For the first time in her life, she understood what belonging felt like. The peace lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, Cordelia Ashworth made her move. Ruth was in the garden when she heard the horses, multiple riders coming fast. She straightened up, wiping dirt from her hands, and felt her stomach drop when she saw who was leading them. Cordelia. Patience. And behind them, 6 men Ruth didn't recognize, but whose badges she did. "Miss Prescott." Cordelia's smile was triumphant. "Or should I say, Miss Imposter?" Ruth's blood went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you?" Cordelia produced a folded paper from her reticule. "I have here a letter from the Missouri authorities. It seems there's some question about your identity, your legal status, whether you're even who you claim to be." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Cordelia handed the paper to the lead rider, a man with a sheriff's star pinned to his chest. "Sheriff Dawson, I believe you'll find everything in order." The sheriff unfolded the paper, read it. His expression didn't change. "Miss Prescott, I'm going to need you to come with us." "On what grounds?" "There's been an accusation of fraud. A woman matching your description allegedly stole money from a household in St. Louis before fleeing west." "That's a lie." Ruth's voice shook. "I've never been to St. Louis in my life." "Then you won't mind answering some questions." The sheriff dismounted. "Cooperate, and this can be resolved quickly." "She's not going anywhere." Josiah's voice cut across the yard. He strode toward them, Samuel at his heels, his face dark with fury. "Mr. Brennan." The sheriff held up a hand. "This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't. That woman is under my protection. She's part of my household." "She's accused of a crime." "By whom?" Josiah snatched the paper from the sheriff's hand, read it. His jaw tightened. "This is from Cordelia Ashworth's brother-in-law, the one who runs the telegraph office in St. Louis. You expect me to believe this isn't a setup?" "I expect you to let me do my job. Your job is protecting innocent people, not harassing them on the word of a woman with a grudge." Cordelia's smile didn't waver. "Careful, Josiah. That sounds dangerously close to obstruction. And this sounds dangerously close to false accusation." Josiah turned to the sheriff. "You know me, Tom. You knew Martha. You've watched me raise these children alone for 3 months. Do you really think I'd bring a criminal into my home?" The sheriff hesitated. "Josiah, give me a week. Let me send a wire to Missouri, to the actual authorities, not Cordelia's pet telegraph operator. If there's a real accusation, I'll bring Ruth to town myself. But if this is what I think it is—" "And what do you think it is, Mr. Brennan?" Cordelia's voice was silk over steel. "Revenge." Josiah met her eyes. "Pure and simple. You can't stand that I chose her over your daughter, so you're trying to destroy her. Patience made a small sound of protest. Cordelia's face went white, then red. "How dare you? How dare I tell the truth?" Josiah stepped closer. "You've been running this town through fear and manipulation for 15 years. But I'm not afraid of you, Cordelia, and neither is she." He looked at Ruth, extended his hand. "Come on, we're going inside." Ruth took his hand. It was steady, warm, certain. They walked past the sheriff, past Cordelia, past Patience and the confused deputies, into the house, the door closed behind them. Through the window, Ruth watched the riders leave. Cordelia's back was rigid with fury. "She'll come back," Ruth said quietly. "I know. Stronger next time, with better ammunition." "I know that too." Ruth turned to face him. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me. If there's even a chance that accusation is true—" "Is it? No. But you don't know that. Not for certain." Josiah was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was gentle, almost tender. "I know enough," he said. "I know you've been here 3 weeks and my children are laughing again. I know Mercy sleeps through the night now. I know Samuel is talking to me instead of hiding in the barn. I know Nettie has a helper in the kitchen and the twins have someone who listens to their secret language, and Clara has someone to hold her hand during grace." His voice dropped. "And I know that when I look at you, I feel something I haven't felt since Martha died. Something I thought I'd never feel again." Ruth's heart stopped. "Josiah." "I'm not asking for anything." He stepped back. "I'm not ready. You're not ready. But I want you to know that whatever Cordelia throws at us, we'll face it together. Because you're not just help anymore, Ruth. You're family." She should say something, should respond, but her throat was too tight for words. So she just nodded, and hoped he understood everything she couldn't say. The wire came back 5 days later. Ruth was innocent. No charges in Missouri. No theft in St. Louis. The whole thing had been fabricated by Cordelia's brother-in-law at her request. Sheriff Dawson delivered the news himself, hat in hand, face red with embarrassment. "I owe you an apology, Miss Prescott. Both of you." "You were doing your job," Ruth said evenly. "I was doing Cordelia Ashworth's dirty work." The sheriff's jaw tightened. "That stops today. I've already sent word to the territorial marshal about what she did. Filing a false report is a serious offense." "Will anything happen to her?" Josiah asked. "Hard to say. She's got connections, money. But her reputation's going to take a hit either way. People are already talking about how she tried to railroad an innocent woman out of spite." After the sheriff left, Ruth sat on the porch and let herself breathe. It was over. The accusation, the threat, the looming shadow of Cordelia's revenge. All of it done. "You okay, Samuel?" Standing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee, Ruth took one. "Getting there." He sat down beside her. Not too close, not too far. The distance of 2 people who were still figuring out how to be around each other. "I talked to Tommy Ashworth," Samuel said. "What?" "At school. Before all this happened." He stared at his coffee. "Told him if he spread any more lies about our family, I'd make sure the whole town knew about the time he wet himself during the Christmas pageant." Ruth choked on her coffee. "You didn't." "He was 8. It was traumatic. For everyone." The ghost of a smile crossed Samuel's face. "Point is, he's not going to bother us anymore. Neither are any of the other kids." "Samuel, you didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did." He looked at her directly. "You're one of us now. That means we protect you. Same as you'd protect us." Ruth's eyes burned. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm 15 and angry, and I miss my mama every single day." His voice cracked. "But I also know she'd want me to give you a chance, so I'm trying. That's all anyone can do." They sat in silence, drinking their coffee, watching the sun move across the sky. "Samuel." "Yeah. Thank you." He nodded. didn't say anything else. But when he went inside, he squeezed her shoulder as he passed. It was more than enough. A month passed. Then 2. The children settled into a new rhythm. Ruth learned each of their quirks, their fears, their secret dreams. She learned that Eli wanted to be a writer someday, that the twins had invented their own language because they'd been born during a blizzard, and no one else had been there to teach them to talk, that Nettie kept a pressed flower from her mother's funeral in her Bible. She learned that Clara was afraid of thunderstorms, and that Mercy still talked to her rag doll like it could answer back. She learned that Samuel had been secretly teaching himself to play his mother's old guitar, that he practiced late at night when he thought everyone was asleep. And she learned about Josiah, about the poetry books hidden in his nightstand, about the letters he'd written to Martha and never sent, about the nightmares that still woke him gasping in the small hours of the morning. She learned that he'd loved his wife with everything he had, and that losing her had broken something in him he wasn't sure could be fixed. She learned that he was trying anyway. One night she found him on the porch staring at the stars. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Never could. Not since—" He trailed off. Ruth sat beside him, close enough to touch. She didn't. "Tell me about her," she said quietly. Josiah was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "She was the bravest person I ever knew. Came out here from Boston with nothing but a trunk full of books and a head full of dreams. Her family disowned her for marrying a rancher. She didn't care." Ruth listened. "She made this house a home, made me a better man, made those children believe they could be anything they wanted." His voice broke. "And then she died bringing our 8th child into the world, and I couldn't save either of them." "Josiah." "The baby was a boy. We were going to name him Matthew, after her father. She thought maybe it would heal things, bring her family back." He laughed bitterly. "Didn't matter in the end." Ruth reached out, took his hand. He held on like she was the only thing keeping him from drowning. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "How to grieve her and want you at the same time. How to honor her memory while building something new. It feels like betrayal." "It's not." "How do you know?" "Because grief and love aren't opposites." Ruth squeezed his hand. "They're two sides of the same coin. You can miss her every day for the rest of your life and still find room for something else. That's not betrayal. That's survival." Josiah turned to look at her. His eyes were wet. "You sound like her. She used to say things like that. Things that made everything make sense. Then she was a wise woman. The wisest." He paused. "She would have liked you." "I hope so." They sat there until the stars began to fade and the sky turned pink with approaching dawn. "Ruth," Josiah said. "Yes. I'm going to ask you something. Not now. Not tomorrow. But soon. And I want you to know that whatever your answer is, it won't change anything. You'll still have a home here. You'll still be part of this family. But I need to ask." Ruth's heart hammered. "Josiah?" "Not yet." He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. "Just think about it. Please." She nodded, couldn't speak. He went inside. Ruth stayed on the porch watching the sun rise over Wyoming and let herself feel it all. The fear, the hope, the terrifying, wonderful possibility of a future she'd never dared imagine. 3 days later, the fever hit. Mercy woke up burning hot, crying for her mama, too weak to lift her head from the pillow. Ruth's blood turned to ice. "Get the doctor," she told Samuel. "Now." "The doctor's in town. It's 2 hours each way." "Then ride fast." Samuel ran. Ruth spent the next 4 hours fighting for Mercy's life. Cold compresses, willow bark tea, every remedy her mother had written in that battered recipe book. Nothing worked. The fever climbed. Mercy's breathing grew ragged. Her lips turned blue. "Don't you dare," Ruth whispered, pressing another cool cloth to the child's forehead. "Don't you dare leave us. Not now. Not when we just found each other." Mercy's eyes fluttered open. "Miss Ruth." "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. I saw Mama." The child's voice was dreamy, far away. "She said I could come with her if I wanted, but I told her no." Ruth's tears fell onto the pillow. "You did?" "I said I had to stay. Because you need me. Because I'm your helper now." Ruth gathered the tiny body into her arms. "That's right, baby girl. That's right. I need you so much. We all need you." Mama said she was proud of me. Mercy's voice was fading. "She said I was brave." "You are brave. The bravest girl I know." "Miss Ruth." "Yes, sweetheart. I love you." Ruth's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the space of a single breath. "I love you too, Mercy. So much. So much." The door burst open. The doctor. Finally. The next 3 hours were a blur of medicines and prayers, and the terrible, suffocating fear that they'd found each other just to lose everything. But Mercy was a fighter. By midnight, the fever broke. Ruth collapsed beside the bed, still holding the child's hand, too exhausted to move. That's how Josiah found her. Asleep on the floor, fingers intertwined with his daughter's tear tracks, still wet on her cheeks. He didn't wake her. He just sat down beside her and stayed there until morning. When Ruth woke, she found a blanket draped over her shoulders and a note tucked into her hand. 4 words. "Thank you. For everything." And beneath them, 3 more. "I love you." Ruth pressed the paper to her heart and wept. The next morning, Mercy was sitting up and demanding breakfast. "I want pancakes," she announced. "With the faces. The way Miss Ruth makes them." Ruth laughed through her tears. "Anything you want, sweetheart. Anything in the world." She made pancakes for all 7 children, drew faces in syrup, let them eat as much as they wanted. Josiah watched from the doorway, his eyes never leaving her. After breakfast, after the dishes were done and the children had scattered to their chores, he caught her hand. "Walk with me." They walked to the edge of the property where the land dropped away into a valley, and you could see for miles in every direction. "I meant what I wrote," Josiah said. Ruth's breath caught. "Josiah." "I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. I know you came here expecting a job, not a life." He turned to face her. "But watching you fight for my daughter last night, watching you love her like she was your own, I knew." "Knew what?" "That I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Not because I need help with the children, not because the house needs running. Because when I'm with you, I feel like myself again. Like the man I was before grief hollowed me out." Ruth's tears fell freely. "I'm 19 years old. I don't know anything about being a wife." "I'm not asking you to know anything. I'm asking you to learn. With me. Together." "What about the children?" "They already love you. Even Samuel, though he'd rather eat his own hat than admit it." A laugh bubbled up through Ruth's tears. "He told me I make acceptable biscuits." From Samuel, that's practically a marriage proposal. Ruth looked at this man. This broken, beautiful man who'd brought her into his home and his family and his heart without asking for anything in return. "Yes," she said. Josiah blinked. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll spend my life with you. Yes to all of it." She grabbed his face in both hands. "But you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me we'll always be honest with each other. No more secrets. No more lies. Whatever happens, we face it together." "I promise." He kissed her, and Ruth finally understood what it meant to come home. The news spread through Blackwater Valley like wildfire. Josiah Brennan was marrying his mail-order bride, the girl from Missouri, the one Cordelia Ashworth had tried to destroy. Ruth heard the whispers when she went to town for supplies, saw the pointed looks, the raised eyebrows, the mouths hidden behind hands. Some of it was curiosity. Some of it was judgment. Some of it was something else entirely, something that looked almost like hope. "Ignore them," Josiah said when she told him. "I'm trying. Try harder." She laughed despite herself. "Is that your advice for everything?" "It's what Martha used to say." His voice softened. She had a thick skin, needed it coming from Boston. The town wasn't kind to her either at first. What changed? She did. Or rather, she didn't. She just kept being herself, kind, stubborn, impossible to hate, until they had no choice but to accept her. Ruth considered this. "And you think that'll work for me?" "I think you've already started." Josiah pulled her close. "Mercy's fever broke because you fought for her. The whole town knows it. Even Cordelia can't spin that into something ugly. But Cordelia, as it turned out, wasn't done trying. The letter arrived 3 days before the wedding. Ruth recognized the handwriting immediately. Cramped, precise, dripping with false propriety. Her stepmother. "What is it?" Josiah asked, watching her face drain of color. Ruth's hands shook as she unfolded the paper. "My dearest Ruth," she read aloud, "how surprised we were to receive word of your upcoming nuptials. Your father and I had quite given up hope of you making anything of yourself after you left in such disgrace. But it seems you've managed to attach yourself to a respectable man after all. We shall be arriving on the 15th to witness the ceremony and ensure everything is in order. Your loving family, Harriet Prescott." The paper crumpled in Ruth's fist. "No. Ruth, no. They don't get to come here. They don't get to pretend they care. They threw me away like garbage and now they want to what? Celebrate, take credit. How did they even know?" Ruth's mind raced. The letter. Cordelia's telegraph connections. Her brother-in-law in St. Louis. "Cordelia," she breathed. "She must have found my family, told them about the wedding, about you." "About the ranch, more likely." Josiah's voice was grim. "About the money." "My father doesn't care about money. He has plenty of his own." "Then why are they coming?" Ruth didn't have an answer, but she knew deep in her bones that it wasn't for her. It was never for her. "I won't let them ruin this," she said fiercely. "Whatever they want, whatever Cordelia's planning, I won't let them take this from us." Josiah took her face in his hands. "They can't take anything from us. Not unless we let them." "You don't know my stepmother." "No. But I know you. And you're stronger than anyone who ever tried to break you." He kissed her forehead. "We'll face them together, whatever comes." Ruth clung to those words like a lifeline. She had a feeling she was going to need them. The Prescotts arrived on a Tuesday. Ruth watched the carriage roll up the drive and felt her stomach clench into a knot so tight she could barely breathe. Her father climbed out first, older than she remembered. Grayer. The lines around his mouth had deepened into something that looked almost like regret. Then Harriet. Ruth's stepmother hadn't changed at all. Same sharp eyes, same thin lips pressed into a permanent line of disapproval. Same way of looking at Ruth like she was a stain that wouldn't quite scrub out. "Ruth." Harriet's voice was cool. How rustic. "Mrs. Prescott. Father." Ruth forced the words past the tightness in her throat. "You didn't need to make such a long journey." "Nonsense. Family should be present for such occasions." Harriet's gaze swept over the house, the yard, the children gathered on the porch. "Though I must say, we weren't expecting quite so many children." "7, Ruth said. "Their names are Samuel, Eli, Abigail, Isaiah, Nettie, Clara, and Mercy. They're going to be my family." "How charitable of you." "It's not charity, it's love." Harriet's smile sharpened. "Yes, well, we'll see how long that lasts." Josiah appeared at Ruth's side. Solid, steady. His hand found the small of her back. "Mr. Prescott, Mrs. Prescott, welcome to our home." Ruth's father extended his hand. "Brennan, heard a lot about you." "From whom?" "Various sources." Her father's eyes flickered to Ruth. My daughter has always had a talent for finding unconventional situations. She has a talent for many things. Josiah's voice was even. Most importantly, she has a talent for making my children feel safe and loved. That's not unconventional. That's extraordinary. Harriet's smile froze. Ruth wanted to kiss him. Perhaps we should go inside, she said instead. I'll put on some coffee. The afternoon was excruciating. Harriet found fault with everything. The coffee was too strong. The chairs were too hard. The children were too loud. Ruth's dress was too plain. Her hair too simple. Her manners too casual for a bride-to-be. Ruth bore it all in silence. She'd had years of practice, but Samuel hadn't. Why do you talk to her like that? He demanded during supper, his fork clattering against his plate. Harriet blinked. I beg your pardon. Miss Ruth, you keep saying mean things about her. Like she's not good enough. Like she doesn't belong here. Samuel, Ruth murmured. It's fine. It's not fine. Samuel's voice rose. She's been here for months. She saved Mercy's life. She's gonna be our mama, and you're sitting there treating her like dirt. Young man, you forget yourself. No, you forget yourself. Samuel stood. This is our house, our family. If you don't like how we do things here, you can leave. Samuel. Ruth reached for him, but Josiah held up a hand. Let him speak. The room went silent. Harriet's face had gone red. Ruth's father looked like he wanted to disappear. Miss Ruth came here with nothing. Samuel continued, his voice shaking with emotion. Nothing except a bag and her mama's recipe book, and a whole lot of courage. She didn't have to stay. She didn't have to fight for us. But she did, because that's who she is. He looked directly at Harriet. You threw her away. You made her feel like she was worthless. But she's not. She's the best thing that ever happened to this family, and I won't sit here and listen to you pretend otherwise. He walked out. The door didn't slam. He just left, quiet, dignified, more of a man than Ruth's own father had ever been. Harriet's mouth opened and closed. Well, I never. No, Ruth said softly. You never did. Ruth! He's right. Ruth met her stepmother's eyes. Everything he said is true. You made me feel worthless for years. You made me believe I was a burden, an inconvenience, a mistake. And I let you, because I was young and scared and I didn't know any better. She stood. But I'm not that girl anymore. I have a home now. I have children who love me. I have a man who thinks I'm extraordinary. And I will not sit at my own table and be diminished by someone who never saw my value. Ruth, please. Her father's voice was hoarse. We came all this way. Why? Ruth demanded. Why did you come? Not for me. You haven't written a single letter in 4 years. You haven't asked how I was doing, or if I needed anything, or if I was even alive. So why now? Her father couldn't meet her eyes, but Harriet could. Because I told him to. Her stepmother's voice was flat, cold. Because when I received word that you'd managed to secure a wealthy widower, I knew we had to see for ourselves. After all the money we spent raising you, we thought perhaps we were entitled to some consideration. Ruth's blood ran cold. Consideration, she repeated. A percentage of the marriage settlement. A small investment in your husband's ranch. Nothing unreasonable. You came here to ask for money. We came here to remind you of your obligations. Ruth laughed. It was a terrible sound, harsh and brittle, and nothing like her real laugh. My obligations. You threw me out. You sent me away to marry a stranger. You made it absolutely clear that I was nothing to you. And now you want me to pay you for the privilege. We are your family, Ruth. No, you're the people who raised me. That's not the same thing. Ruth pointed to the porch where Samuel had gone, to the house where 6 other children were listening from their hiding spots. That's my family. Those 7 children who look at me like I matter. That man who treats me like I'm a gift, not a burden. She turned to Josiah. I want them gone, tonight. Ruth, her father started. Tonight. Her voice was steel. Before the wedding, before they can poison anything else. Josiah nodded. I'll arrange for a wagon. You can't do this. Harriet's voice rose. I'll tell everyone. I'll write to the newspapers. I'll make sure the whole territory knows what kind of ungrateful wretch you really are. Ruth leaned close enough to see the fear flickering behind her stepmother's anger. Go ahead, she whispered. Tell them everything. Tell them how you treated me. How you starved me of affection while your own children had everything. How you convinced my father to sign me away like property. Tell them all of it. She straightened. Because I have nothing to hide. And neither does this family. We're not ashamed of how we came together. We're proud of it. Can you say the same? Harriet had no answer. Ruth walked out of the room with her head held high and her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She found Samuel on the porch. He was staring at the stars, his shoulders tight with leftover anger. That was brave, she said quietly. That was rude. Those aren't mutually exclusive. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I shouldn't have made a scene. Maybe not. Ruth sat beside him. But I'm glad you did. No one's ever defended me like that before. Then the people in your life before were idiots. Ruth laughed a real laugh this time, warm and surprised and full of affection for this prickly protective boy who'd somehow become her son. Samuel. Yeah. Thank you. For seeing me. For fighting for me. For giving me a chance even when you didn't want to. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, thank you for staying. Even when we made it hard. Ruth put her arm around his shoulders. He tensed, then relaxed into her touch. I'll always stay, she said. That's a promise. The Prescotts left that night. No goodbyes. No apologies. Just the sound of wagon wheels fading into the darkness. Ruth didn't watch them go. She was too busy putting the younger children to bed, reading stories, answering questions, reassuring Mercy that no, the mean lady wasn't coming back. Yes, Miss Ruth would be here in the morning. When she finally made it back downstairs, Josiah was waiting. How are you? He asked. I don't know. Ruth sank into a chair. Angry, relieved, sad. Sad. He's still my father. Part of me always hoped. She trailed off. It doesn't matter. Hope is different from expectation. I hoped he'd changed. I didn't expect it. Josiah knelt in front of her, took her hands. You deserve a father who sees you, who loves you, who fights for you. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I can't give you that. But I can give you a family who does all those things. I can give you children who already think you hung the moon. And I can give you a husband who will spend the rest of his life making sure you never feel unwanted again. Ruth's tears fell. She didn't try to stop them. How did I get so lucky? She whispered. You didn't get lucky. You got brave. Josiah pulled her into his arms. You got on that stagecoach and came to a place you'd never been to, people you'd never met, with nothing but faith that it would be better than what you were leaving. That's not luck. That's courage. Ruth buried her face in his shoulder and let herself cry. Not from sadness, not anymore. From relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming realization that she'd finally found where she belonged. The wedding was 3 days later. The whole town came. Not because they approved, though many did now, but because Josiah Brennan marrying his mail-order bride was the most interesting thing to happen in Blackwater Valley in years. Cordelia Ashworth was conspicuously absent. Word had gotten out about her false accusations about her attempt to use Ruth's family against her. The town's opinion had shifted. Not entirely. Cordelia still had her loyalists, but enough that showing her face at the wedding would have been a humiliation she couldn't afford. Ruth wore a dress Clara had helped pick out. Simple cotton clean lines. Nothing fancy. But when she walked down the aisle of the little church and saw Josiah's face, the way his eyes lit up, the way his breath caught, she felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. The children stood in the front row. Samuel held Mercy. The twins flanked him like honor guards. Nettie clutched a handkerchief she'd embroidered herself. Clara was already crying. Eli stood straight and tall, trying to look grown up, despite the fact that his cowlick refused to stay down. Reverend Morrison spoke the familiar words: love, honor, cherish. But Ruth heard different ones: family, home, belonging. Do you, Josiah Brennan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Ruth Prescott, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Ruth looked at him. At this man who'd taken a chance on a stranger, who'd defended her against gossips and deputies and her own blood, who'd taught his children to love her and then loved her himself. I do. I now pronounce you man and wife. The kiss was sweet, brief, perfect. The children swarmed them the moment they turned from the altar. Mercy reached for Ruth first, then Clara, then the twins, then Nettie, then Eli. Samuel hung back until Ruth held out her hand, and then he joined too, this teenage boy who'd hated her 3 months ago, now clutching her like he'd never let go. Family, Mercy said firmly. We're family now. We are, sweetheart. Ruth kissed the top of her head. We always were. The reception was held at the ranch. Simple food, simple decorations. Nothing like the elaborate affairs Harriet would have demanded back in Missouri. It was perfect. Ruth danced with Josiah while the children clapped. She danced with Samuel, who blushed but didn't pull away. She danced with Eli, who stepped on her feet 3 times and apologized 17. She let Clara stand on her shoes and waltz around the room giggling. And when night finally fell and the last guests had left, she stood on the porch with her husband, and watched the stars come out over Wyoming. Mrs. Brennan, Josiah said. Ruth smiled. Mr. Brennan. How does it feel? She considered the question, really considered it. Like coming home, she said finally. Like I've been walking for years and finally found the place I was supposed to be. Josiah wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder. I never thought I'd feel this again, he murmured. After Martha, I thought that part of my life was over. I thought I'd just be surviving until I died, managing, getting by. And now I'm living again, because of you. Ruth turned in his arms, looked up at this man who'd become her whole world. I love you, she said. The words came easier now. She'd been practicing. I love you too. He kissed her, soft, tender, full of promise. Now let's go check on the children. Ruth laughed. Always. They found Mercy already asleep, ragdoll clutched tight. Clara had crawled into bed beside her. The twins were reading by candlelight, pretending to be asleep when the door opened, not fooling anyone. Nettie was organizing her dresser for the 3rd time that day. Eli was already snoring. Samuel was still awake. Everything okay? Ruth asked. Yeah. He shifted over, making room for her to sit on the edge of his bed. Just thinking. About what? About how different things are now. He paused. About how glad I am that Pa put that advertisement in the paper. Ruth's heart swelled. Yeah. Don't let it go to your head. But he was smiling. Good night, Ruth. She'd asked them to call her that. Not Miss Ruth. Not Mama. Not yet. Not unless they wanted to. Just Ruth. Good night, Samuel. She bent and kissed his forehead. He let her. When she finally made it back to the master bedroom, her bedroom now hers and Josiah's, her husband was waiting. All settled. All settled. He held out his hand. She took it. And Ruth Prescott Brennan, mail-order bride mother of 7, wife of the best man she'd ever known, walked into her new life without looking back. 6 months changed everything. Ruth woke to the sound of children laughing in the kitchen. Real laughter. The kind that had been missing from this house when she first arrived. The kind that meant healing. She lay still for a moment listening. Mercy's giggle, Clara's shriek, the twins arguing about something, probably who got the last pancake. Nettie's voice cutting through, bossy but affectionate. Eli saying something that made everyone groan. Samuel's low chuckle. Her family. Ruth pressed a hand to her stomach and smiled. She hadn't told anyone yet, not even Josiah. She was waiting for the right moment. Waiting to be sure. But she was sure now. Had been for 2 weeks. A baby. Their baby. The first child she and Josiah would bring into this world together. "You're awake." Josiah stood in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "Couldn't sleep through that racket." Ruth sat up, accepted the cup he offered. "What are they fighting about? Who gets to sit next to you at breakfast?" Ruth laughed. "Seriously." Mercy called dibs. Clara said dibs doesn't count. The twins are now drawing up a rotation schedule. Josiah sat on the edge of the bed. "Our children are insane." Our children. The words still made Ruth's heart flutter. "I need to tell you something," she said. Josiah's expression shifted. Concern. Wariness. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Ruth took his hand, pressed it flat against her belly. "Something's right." She watched understanding dawn, watched his eyes widen, watched his breath catch. "Ruth, are you?" "Yes." "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. I wanted to be certain." Josiah set down his coffee. His hands were shaking. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby. I know it's soon. I know we're still figuring things out. If you're not ready..." He kissed her. Hard. Deep. Full of everything he couldn't put into words. "I'm ready," he said against her lips. "God, Ruth, I'm so ready." "Should we tell the children?" "Yes. No. I don't know." He laughed, actually laughed, his whole face transforming with joy. Let me sit with this for a minute." Ruth watched him process it. The wonder. The fear. The overwhelming happiness that softened the grief lines around his eyes. "Martha would be happy," she said quietly. Josiah's breath caught. "You think so?" "I know so. She'd want you to have this. She'd want the children to have this." Ruth squeezed his hand. "She'd want us to keep living even without her." "I miss her," Josiah admitted, "every day. But it's different now. It's not the same crushing weight it was when you first came." "Grief doesn't disappear. It just changes shape." "When did you get so wise?" "About the time I fell in love with a widower and his 7 impossible children." Josiah pulled her close. 8. "What?" 8 children now. Soon." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Ruth Brennan." "I love you too." They told the children at breakfast. Ruth had expected chaos. She got silence. 7 faces staring at her. 7 expressions ranging from shock to confusion to something that might have been fear. Mercy broke first. "Does that mean you're staying forever?" Ruth's heart clenched. "Sweetheart, I was always staying forever." "But now you have to, because the baby will need you." "I'm not staying because I have to. I'm staying because I want to. The baby doesn't change that." "Promise?" "I promise." Mercy launched herself into Ruth's arms. Clara followed. Then the twins, then Nettie. Samuel and Eli held back. "What's wrong?" Ruth asked. Eli shrugged, not meeting her eyes. "Nothing." "Eli." "It's just..." He swallowed. "When Mama had the baby, she didn't..." "Oh. Oh, God." Ruth understood suddenly. The fear in their eyes. The way Samuel had gone rigid. The terror hiding beneath their smiles. Their mother had died in childbirth. And now Ruth was pregnant. "Come here," she said. "Both of you." They came, reluctantly. Samuel's jaw was tight. Eli's eyes were wet. "I know you're scared. Ruth said quietly. I know what happened to your mama, and I can't promise that nothing will go wrong. Nobody can promise that. But I can promise that I'm healthy, I'm strong, and I have every intention of being around to watch this baby grow up alongside all of you. Mama was strong too, Samuel whispered. I know. And what happened to her was a tragedy, but it was also rare. Most women survive childbirth just fine. I plan to be one of them. What if you're not? Ruth looked at this boy, this almost man who'd lost his mother and was terrified of losing someone else. Then you'll take care of the little ones, she said. The way you always have, the way your mama taught you, and your papa will be here, and you'll all survive because that's what this family does. Samuel's face crumpled. Ruth held him while he cried, held Eli too, held all of them, this tangle of children who'd been through too much and were still finding their way. We're going to be okay, she said. I know it doesn't feel like that sometimes. I know you're scared, but we're going to be okay, together. Promise? Mercy asked again. Promise. The months passed quickly after that. Ruth's belly grew. The children took turns talking to it, telling the baby stories about the ranch, about their lives, about the mother who'd come to them from Missouri and never left. Samuel started calling her Mama. It happened without fanfare. One morning at breakfast, he asked her to pass the butter, and the word just slipped out. Mama, can you pass the butter? The whole table went silent. Samuel turned red. I didn't mean I can still call you Ruth if... No. Ruth's voice was thick with tears. No, Samuel. Mama is perfect. He nodded once, went back to his breakfast. But later that day, Ruth found him in the barn, brushing down his horse with more intensity than necessary. You okay? She asked. Yeah. Samuel. He stopped brushing, didn't turn around. I wasn't trying to forget her, he said quietly. My real mama. You've been here for almost a year now. You've done everything she used to do. You've loved us like she loved us. And I started thinking maybe it's okay to have two. It is okay. The little ones don't remember her much. Mercy barely remembers her at all, but I do. I remember everything. His voice broke. I remember how she smelled, how she laughed, how she used to sing us to sleep. Ruth moved closer, put her hand on his shoulder. Tell me about her. Samuel turned. His eyes were wet. She was brave, really brave. She stood up to anyone who tried to push her around, and she was funny. God, she was so funny. She could make Papa laugh until he couldn't breathe. What else? She loved this ranch, loved Wyoming, said it was the first place she ever felt free. Samuel wiped his eyes. She would have loved you, Ruth. She would have been so glad you found us. I think about her a lot, Ruth admitted. About how she raised you, how she made this house a home. I try to honor that. To keep the things she built instead of replacing them. You're not replacing her. You're adding to it, making it bigger. That's exactly what I want. Samuel hugged her, hard, fierce, the hug of a boy who'd been holding himself together for too long. Thank you, he said, for staying, for loving us, for giving us another chance. Thank you for letting me. The baby came in early spring. Ruth had been right, she was strong. But labor was labor, and by the time the midwife arrived, she was exhausted. Josiah paced outside the bedroom door. The children huddled in the hallway, listening to every sound. Is Mama going to be okay? Clara asked. She's going to be fine, Samuel said firmly. She promised. But what if... She promised. Inside, Ruth gripped the bedpost and pushed. Almost there, the midwife said. One more, Mrs. Brennan. Ruth screamed, pushed, felt something tear loose inside her. And then, a cry. Thin and reedy, and absolutely perfect. It's a girl, the midwife announced. Healthy as can be. Ruth collapsed back against the pillows, laughing and crying at the same time. Let me see her. The midwife placed the baby in Ruth's arms. A tiny, red-faced, furious little person with a shock of dark hair and eyes that couldn't quite focus yet. "Hello, sweetheart," Ruth whispered. "I've been waiting for you." The door burst open. Josiah stood frozen in the doorway, his face white with fear. "Ruth, are you?" "We're fine." Ruth smiled up at him. "Come meet your daughter." Josiah crossed the room in 3 steps, sank to his knees beside the bed, looked at the baby with an expression of such overwhelming love that Ruth started crying all over again. "She's perfect," he breathed. "She is. What should we name her?" Ruth had been thinking about this for months, had been carrying the name in her heart like a secret. "Martha," she said, "after the woman who made this family possible." Josiah's breath caught. His eyes filled. "Ruth. She deserves to be remembered. And our daughter deserves to carry that legacy." Josiah kissed her, kissed the baby, pressed his forehead against Ruth's, and let himself weep. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. For coming here. For staying. For loving us. For this. Thank you for giving me a home." The door creaked. 7 faces appeared in the gap. "Can we come in?" Mercy asked. "Please." Ruth laughed. "Get in here, all of you." They swarmed the bed. Mercy wiggled in beside Ruth. Clara climbed up next to her. The twins jockeyed for position. Nettie claimed the spot closest to the baby. Eli hung back until Ruth beckoned him forward. Samuel stood at the foot of the bed, his face soft with wonder. "Everyone," Ruth said, "meet your sister, Martha Joy Brennan." "She's so small," Clara breathed. "She's so loud," Eli added as the baby started fussing. "She's ours," Samuel said quietly. Ruth looked around at her family, at the 7 children who'd become hers through choice and love, at the husband who'd given her everything she never knew she needed, at the daughter who would grow up surrounded by siblings who adored her. This was what she'd come west for. This was what she'd found at the end of that long stagecoach ride from Missouri. Not just a job, not just a house, a home. Summer brought new challenges, and an unexpected visitor. Ruth was nursing the baby on the porch when the rider appeared on the horizon. She shaded her eyes trying to make out who it was. "Josiah," she called. "Are you expecting anyone?" He emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag, squinted at the approaching figure. "No." His voice was cautious. "Go inside. Take the children." Josiah. "Please, Ruth." She went, gathered the little ones, found Samuel already standing by the window watching. The rider drew closer, dismounted. Ruth's blood ran cold. It was her father. He looked older than he had 6 months ago, thinner. His clothes hung loose on his frame, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Josiah intercepted him before he reached the porch. "Mr. Prescott, you're not welcome here." "I know." Her father's voice was hoarse. "I know I'm not, but I need to speak to my daughter, please." "She doesn't want to speak to you." "I know that too, but I'm dying, Mr. Brennan, and I need to make things right before I go." Ruth's heart stopped. She handed the baby to Samuel, walked out onto the porch. "What did you say?" Her father looked up. For a moment, something like hope flickered in his eyes. "Ruth, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "What did you say about dying?" "Consumption." He coughed a wet, rattling sound. "The doctors gave me 3 months. That was 2 months ago." Ruth's legs went weak. She grabbed the porch railing. "Why are you here?" "Because I couldn't die without telling you the truth." Her father's voice broke. "I was a coward. I let Harriet control everything because it was easier than fighting. I watched her push you out of your own home and I did nothing. I told myself it was for the best, that you'd be better off somewhere else, but I knew. I always knew I was failing you." You did fail me. I know. You let her send me away like I was nothing. I know. And now you want forgiveness. Now that you're dying and you're scared of what comes next. Her father didn't answer. Just stood there, thin and broken, the ghost of the man he used to be. Ruth wanted to hate him. Wanted to turn away and never look back. Wanted to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he'd caused her. But she thought of Martha, of the baby sleeping inside, of the example she wanted to set for her children. "Where's Harriet?" she asked. "Gone. Left 3 weeks after we returned from Wyoming, took everything she could carry, and disappeared with her sister's husband." Her father laughed bitterly. "Turns out she was only interested in me for the money. Once the doctor's bills started piling up, she decided to cut her losses. I'm sorry. Don't be. I deserved it." He met her eyes. "Ruth, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to understand. I needed you to know that I see you now. I see the woman you've become, the family you've built, the life you've made. And I'm proud of you." Ruth's tears fell before she could stop them. "It's too late for that." "I know. You can't just show up after everything and expect—" "I don't expect anything." Her father's voice was gentle. "I just wanted to say it. Once, while I still could." They stood in silence. The wind blew. The baby cried inside. Ruth made a decision. "Stay," she said. Josiah's head snapped toward her. "Ruth, not forever, but stay until the end. Let the children meet their grandfather. Let me—" She swallowed. "Let me try to forgive you while there's still time." Her father's face crumpled. He didn't speak. Couldn't speak. Josiah came to stand beside Ruth. "Are you sure?" "No." She took his hand. "But I'm tired of carrying anger. I'm tired of letting the past poison my present. He's going to die either way. He can die alone, or he can die knowing his daughter tried to make peace. You're a better person than I am. I'm just tired." Josiah squeezed her hand, turned to her father. "You can stay in the spare room. You'll take your meals with us. You'll treat my wife with respect. And if you do anything to hurt her or our children, I'll put you on the next stagecoach out of here myself. Understood?" Her father nodded. "Understood. Then welcome to our home, such as it is." The next month was strange. Ruth watched her father fade, watched him grow weaker, thinner, more fragile. But she also watched him try. He told the children stories about Ruth as a baby, about her mother, about the life they'd had before everything fell apart. He taught Samuel to play chess, helped Eli with his writing, let Mercy climb onto his lap and babble at him for hours. He held baby Martha with trembling hands and tears streaming down his face. "She has your eyes," he said, "and your mother's chin." "I know. Ruth." He looked up at her. "I wasted so much time, so many years I could have had with you, with your children." "I know. If I could go back, you can't." Ruth sat beside him. "Nobody can. All we have is now. Is now enough?" She considered the question, really considered it. "It has to be." Her father died on a Tuesday, quiet, peaceful, surrounded by family. Ruth held his hand as he slipped away, felt the exact moment his grip went slack. "Goodbye, Papa," she whispered. She hadn't called him that in years. The funeral was small, just family. Ruth stood beside the grave with Josiah's arm around her and her children pressed close. "Are you okay?" Samuel asked. "No." Ruth wiped her eyes. "But I will be." "Do you regret it? Letting him stay?" No. She was sure of that much. "I'm glad I did. Glad I got to see him try. Glad the children got to know him even briefly. He loved you, in the end. Maybe. Or maybe he just loved the idea of being forgiven." Ruth sighed. "It doesn't matter. I did what I needed to do. Now I can move forward. Without the anger? Without the weight? Samuel nodded, slipped his hand into hers. I'm proud of you, he said, for what it's worth. It's worth everything. Autumn arrived with golden leaves and crisp air and the comfortable rhythms of a family that had finally found its footing. Ruth stood on the porch one evening watching her children play in the yard. Martha was 6 months old now, sitting up on her own, watching her siblings with wide, fascinated eyes. Mercy was teaching Clara a clapping game. The twins were racing each other around the barn. Nettie was bossing everyone around. Eli was reading under a tree. Samuel was helping Josiah fix the fence. 8 children. 1 husband. 1 home. 1 life she'd never dared imagine. Josiah looked up from his work, caught her eye, smiled. Ruth smiled back. Mama. Mercy ran up to the porch, breathless. Mama Clara says I'm cheating, but I'm not. Tell her I'm not. You're not cheating, Ruth said automatically. See? Mercy stuck her tongue out at Clara and ran back to continue the game. Ruth laughed. This was her life now. Messy, loud, chaotic, absolutely perfect. Mrs. Brennan. Samuel had approached without her noticing. Can I talk to you for a minute? Of course. He sat beside her on the porch steps. 16 now, almost a man. So different from the angry boy who'd glared at her from behind his father that first day. I've been thinking, he said, about when I'm older, about what I want to do. And I want to stay here. Help Papa run the ranch. Take it over someday if he'll let me. He'd love that. I know. Samuel paused. But I also want you to know that, whatever happens, I'll take care of them. The little ones. If anything ever... Samuel, I just need you to know that they'll be okay, that I'll make sure of it. Ruth's heart swelled with love for this boy who'd grown up too fast. I know you will. I've always known that. She put her arm around him. But you don't have to carry that weight alone anymore. That's what family is for. I'm glad you're here, Samuel said quietly. I'm glad Papa found you. I'm glad you're my mama. Ruth kissed the top of his head. I'm glad too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know. That night after the children were in bed, Ruth and Josiah sat on the porch together. The stars blazed overhead. The wind carried the scent of sage and possibility. Happy? Josiah asked. Ruth considered the question. A year ago, she'd been a girl with nothing. No home, no family, no future. She'd answered an advertisement out of desperation, boarded a stagecoach with $17 and a broken heart, and traveled across the country to marry a stranger. Now she had everything. Yes, she said. More than I ever thought possible. Josiah pulled her close. Same. Any regrets? 1. He grinned. I should have placed that advertisement sooner. Ruth laughed and kissed him. Inside, the baby cried. One of the children shouted. Something crashed. Your turn, Ruth said. It's always my turn. Welcome to fatherhood. Josiah groaned, theatrically kissed her again, and went inside. Ruth stayed on the porch a moment longer, listened to the sounds of her family, let the peace settle into her bones. She thought about the girl she'd been when she stepped off that stagecoach. Scared, desperate, convinced she was worthless. She wasn't that girl anymore. She was Ruth Brennan, wife, mother, partner, survivor. She'd come west with nothing but courage and a mother's recipe book. She'd found everything she never knew she was looking for, and as the stars wheeled overhead and her family's voices drifted through the open door, Ruth closed her eyes and smiled. She was home. She was loved. She was exactly where she was meant to be. That was enough. That was everything.